What's up guys, Jeff from Sorta Healthy here. Today I'll be sharing 10 things that I wish I knew before I got into personal training. Unfortunately, personal training is probably one of the most misunderstood professions that there is. So many people get into this line of work expecting something, and when reality doesn't match the expectation, what happens? Well, oftentimes the trainer quits. So hopefully a video detailing things trainers should know before getting into the field helps to clear some of that stuff up, and hopefully it prevents a few people from getting into the field if it's not for them. Before I start breaking down the things I wish I knew before getting into training, all I ask is that you consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Both of those things really do help to support this channel, and this channel is a free resource for all fitness professionals. Thank you so much for that support, everyone. It is very appreciated. Before I start breaking down my list, I have a question for all the trainers out there. What is one thing you wish you knew before getting into the field? Let me know your number one thing down below in the comments. The first thing I wish I knew before getting into the field is that you should keep your programming simple. When you're working with typical clients, there should be a few boxes that you're checking every week when it comes to programming. Your sessions should mostly consist of compound exercises. On a weekly basis, your clients should be doing horizontal pressing like bench pressing or push-ups. They should be pressing overhead. They should be doing horizontal pulls like rows, vertical pulls like lat pull downs, hip hinges like deadlifts, and knee dominant lower body compounds like squats or lunges. The only reason not to do any of these movements would be due to client limitations such as previous injury. You should also make sure that you're progressing your clients' workouts slowly but surely over time. The only way to keep tabs on all that stuff is by taking good notes, and because of that, keeping good workout records is also something you should be doing. I oftentimes see trainers try to make fairly complicated long-term plans for general population clients. This usually ends up being a total waste of time, and that's because of how inconsistent the average person is when it comes to exercising. That's why you have a job in the first place. Never forget it. So keep good records, focus on the compound lifts, and progress your clients slowly over time. Basically, keep it simple. I have a bunch of videos that cover exactly how I go about doing all this with clients. All the forms that I use in my business are free to download and explained in those videos as well. Something that I just mentioned in that last bit was general population clients. And that brings me to the second thing that I wish I knew, and that is that general population clients are the best to work with. Whenever I'm meeting a new trainer and we're having a conversation, at some point we'll end up talking about niches or ideal clients. Essentially, we'll end up discussing who the new trainer wants to train. Very often the new trainer will say they want to train athletes or bodybuilders or some other demographic, and even though I keep a straight face as the new trainer is telling me all of this, internally alarms are going off in my head. I'm not going to waste any time here. Typically athletes, bodybuilders, and many other similar groups are terrible clients. For one, oftentimes they already know what they're doing to a large extent. But more importantly, usually they just don't actually have that much money. Also, there really aren't that many of those sorts of people around in the first place. General population clients who are interested in personal training typically have a few things in common. One, they really need your help. They need help with everything, but accountability is usually what they need the most. Two, they very oftentimes have disposable income. Whether you like it or not, having clients with disposable income is necessary if you're trying to stay booked up and make a good living yourself. Three, there are infinitely more general population clients than there are athletes, bodybuilders, powerlifters, etc. Again, that means you can actually get booked up. I could keep going here, but the sooner that you accept that Gen Pop clients are the best, the better off you'll be. On that note, the next thing that I wish I knew before getting into training was how it's really all about your client's goals. I think to some extent we all know this coming into training. That said, many trainers, especially rookie trainers, try to push their own agendas onto their clients. What you do in your own workouts should have very little impact on what your clients do. 90-something% of the time, your clients won't be anything like you, so their workouts looking a bit different compared to yours should make a lot of sense. Some of this is also due to the certification process in training as well. Simply put, some information taught just really isn't all that useful. Maybe NASM thinks you should have your client do a phase where many of the moves require balancing on unstable surfaces. If you think that phase won't be particularly beneficial for your client or bring them closer to their goals, or maybe you just think the client won't perceive that stuff as high value, I think you should throw that phase in the trash and do something something that your client will benefit from more. The next thing I wish I knew before I got into training was that your appearance matters, but less than you'd think. Like we said before, general population people will be the best clients for almost everybody watching this video right now. Since that is the case, we have to put ourselves in the mind of an average personal training client. So, who would your 50-year-old female neighbor want to train with? It turns out that she would probably want to train with someone who is fit, but not like a bodybuilder, which can almost be a little intimidating, and she'd want to work with someone who looks and sounds professional and knowledgeable. You should definitely be practicing what you preach, and you should be preaching consistent exercise, so keep that in mind. You should be in shape, but you definitely don't need to look like a prime Arnold or Dana Lynn Bailey. For best results, you should look professional, clean cut, and yeah, you should know what you're talking about. By the way, if you are actually going to be training bodybuilders, then that's a bit of a different story. You should look like a bodybuilder at that point, because if you're going to be training bodybuilders, at least to some extent, you should also be living that lifestyle. If we go back to that 50-year-old client that we were just talking about, what do you think really matters to that customer the most? Other than achieving their goals, the answer is good communication and customer service. So before I got into it, I wish I knew that being a good communicator and offering good customer service is most of the job. You'll be spending more time with some of your clients than your closest friends and family members. An average client will see you for 2 hours a week, give or take, and if you're keeping a good percentage of your clients for a year or more, then yeah, you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that you'll be spending a lot of time together. So for better or worse, a huge part of the job just comes down to being personable and a good communicator. I'll even take this a step further. The most successful trainers I've seen usually aren't the best ones on paper. The most successful trainers will be the ones who make good connections with their clients. Offering good customer service just goes hand in hand with all of that. Try to do everything in your power to be responsive and accommodating to your clients' needs. Next, we come to the thing that breaks more trainers than anything else. And I'm not talking about sales, we'll talk about that soon. Anyways, I wish I knew that you'll be working when other people aren't before I got started. Again, I think we all know this to some degree coming into training, but most people don't know the full extent of what I'm talking about. Having done this for over a decade now and having run a private training facility for half that time, I can tell you that about 90% of clients are going to want to train before or after typical work hours. This means you'll be training clients from around 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. or 4:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., or you'll be working both of those shifts in a single day, which is called a split shift. Also, weekend days are in high demand as well. This before and after work schedule really does end up being a grind if you want to train clients full time. If you're going to be working full time, you'll almost certainly end up doing some split shifts at some point in your career. Some trainers don't mind or even end up liking these weird hours, but unfortunately, it does cause many to burn out as well. The next thing I wish I knew was that it's really hard to make a lot of money. Right away, I'm going to say it. If you're getting into training for the money, don't. You'll almost certainly end up disappointed if you do. The barrier to entry is low for personal trainers. You don't need a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or even a license. All you need is a certification that you can get in a few months if you really apply yourself. Pretty much any time the barrier to entry is on the lower side, the pay is going to be there too. Now, before I get everyone too angry, I'm not saying that you can't make a good amount of money as a trainer. I take home about $100,000 a year as a trainer who runs their own business. It took me a good while to get to that level of pay though, and there were many years on the way where I barely got by. Anyways, training is typically a job where you're directly trading your time for money. Unless you're a doctor or a lawyer or some other profession where the barrier to entry is high, you will never make that much money directly trading time for money. Long story short, get into training because you're passionate about fitness or helping people, or both. Don't do it for the cash. Since we just talked about money a bit, sales does seem like the next thing that we should cover. And I would say that sales is the most misunderstood part of the job. Basically, early on, I wish I knew that sales isn't what you'd think. So often people have used car salesman thoughts in their head when they're thinking about sales. Aggressive sales tactics, like what you'd find an actual used car salesman doing, are pretty much the absolute last thing you're going to want to use on the gym floor. Clients are going to have a few goals, and usually one of those goals is going to stand above the rest. Most often that goal will be weight loss, but sometimes it'll be something else like strength gain. Over the course of an initial consultation, a few key things should happen that will give you the best odds of signing a client on. First off, stay as positive and confident the entire time as possible. And if you're not a confident person, you're going to have to fake it until you make it. Your confidence is one of the things that will help your client believe that you can help them achieve their goals. Second, you'll want to ask good questions about short and long-term goals. You'll want to ask about barriers that have prevented them from achieving their goals in the past. You'll want to ask some questions about nutrition and anything else that comes up as you're having this conversation. The third thing to think about, and this is probably the most important one, is that you should spend a lot of time listening. Usually you'll be listening more than you'll be talking in these initial consultations. Never be salesy in these meetings. Be genuine, positive, confident, and tell it like it is. If you're able to do all of that in a professional way, you're going to do well. If you do this enough, eventually you'll start thinking about sales more like a conversation or presentation, which is really all that it is. Now, to do all of that effectively, most likely you're going to need some good systems. Lucky for you, you can see how I do consultations in this video right here. I'll be releasing a new consultation video at some point soon, but that one still does hold up. The next thing that I wish I knew before getting into training was that you can do nutrition coaching with clients. The training certification programs make it seem like nutrition coaching is off limits, but that's not true. In green states, you can do nutrition coaching with clients. Don't write any meal plans or give any advice to clients who have health issues, but giving most clients dietary advice is very much legal and something you should be doing. If you're in a yellow or red state, legally you can't give clients dietary advice. You can guide a client to an app like MyFitnessPal or give them a print off from a place like Precision Nutrition. Those resources were created by dietitians, not you. You can also do weekly weigh-ins with clients regardless of where you live. These three strategies are incredibly useful. You should be doing them with weight loss clients. If you live in another country, make sure to check your laws, but my point is, in pretty much any location, you're going to be able to help your clients with dietary habits to some capacity. The last thing I wish I knew before getting into training was that accountability is your superpower. I talked about this one a lot in a recent video where I was discussing some of the effects that ChatGPT could have on the personal training industry. One of the main themes of that video was to not underestimate how much of your job as a trainer is really just holding your clients accountable. Oftentimes, people who seek out personal training are very successful in at least a few aspects of their life. They tend to be career-driven and good at what they do. Of course, this is partially what enables them to have that disposable income that we mentioned before. They also tend to be focused on their family. Oftentimes, they're caring for at least one person to some capacity. Of course, I'm generalizing here. Many clients won't fit that description, but most will. Since these people are so focused on everything other than themselves, having time where they're just working on their own well-being personally is huge. Again, very often these people are successful and busy. They're going to need the appointment time, and they're going to need someone like you to help keep them on track when it comes to their fitness. You could be the best trainer in the world when it comes to programming or session design, but even if you were that good, your ability to hold your clients accountable would still be as or more important than your training skills. Do any of you watching this video have anything to add to my list? Do you have something that you wish you knew before getting into the field? If you do, make sure to let me know down below in the comments. I always appreciate hearing what you guys have to say as well. And if you haven't done so already, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, because both of those things really do help the channel to grow, and that does allow me to create more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone, and until next time, stay sort of healthy.